I remember the first time I walked into their estate. The door swung open, and the air smelled faintly of roses and polished wood, rich, controlled, untouchable. "Darling, you made it," Evelyn said, her voice syrupy, sweet enough to hide venom. She smiled, but her eyes were sharp, measuring. I returned the smile, careful. Of course, I wouldn't miss it. Robert gave me a nod, brief, almost imperceptible, but Evelyn, she lingered in the doorway as if deciding whether I belonged. I felt her judgment like a weight pressing down on my chest. "Oh, don't mind her," Robert said, trying to smooth over the tension. "Come meet everyone." I stepped forward, and the room erupted in polite chatter. Laughter floated over glasses clinking, but every laugh that wasn't mine felt like it was aimed at me or worse, at my failure to belong. Evelyn sidled up, brushing her fingers against mine. "You know, some of us just hope you understand our ways." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I froze for a heartbeat. "Our ways?" I asked, voice tight. She tilted her head, letting the question hang like a trap. "Yes, how things are done here. You wouldn't know." It hit me then, sharp, unmistakable, not a welcome, a warning. I forced my lips into a smile. "I make'll learn. I want to be part of the family." Her laugh was soft, a sound meant to sting. "Oh, sweetie, it's not about wanting. Some doors they simply don't set open for everyone." I felt my chest tighten, the air leaving me. Everyone else was there, chatting, sipping wine, oblivious or complicit. I wanted to vanish. Later at the dining table, I tried to join the conversation. I made a joke about a shared hobby, something harmless. Evelyn's fork paused midair. She glanced at Robert, who raised his eyebrows, then back at me. "Interesting perspective," she said, the emphasis on interesting cutting. "Do you often think you fit in so easily?" I laughed. Brittle. "I just thought we could all—" "Darling," she interrupted, voice soft but icy, "it's not about thought." Her words wrapped around me like chains. Every glance from her, every small whisper I caught, "She'll never fit in," was a knife twisting. I excused myself to the balcony. Rain had started, soft at first, then pounding against the glass. The city lights blurred through the downpour. I hugged myself, trying to breathe. "Do they hate me?" I whispered to no one. The rain answered back. My phone buzzed. Mark. My husband. I wanted him to make it stop. To defend me. "Are you okay?" His voice was warm. Concerned. "I don't think they ever wanted me here," I said, voice breaking. "Dinna take it personally," he said gently. "They just have their ways." I shook my head, rain blurring my vision. "No, this isn't just Tua's. It's exclusion." They looked through me tonight. Through me, Mark, like I didn't exist. "Maybe it's misunderstanding," he said cautiously. I hung up, knowing it wasn't a misunderstanding. Not when Evelyn's eyes had said, "You'll never be one of us." Not when Robert's polite nod had said nothing, had left me floating, unanchored. I started the car, rain soaking the windshield, the engine roared against the silence. Every turn of the wheel felt like a small escape, but my mind was still trapped in that house, in that room, in those eyes. And then it hit me, clear and cold. If they would never see me as family, if I was destined to be invisible, dismissed, beneath their notice, then maybe I'd have to speak a language they could understand. Money, power, presence. I clenched the steering wheel, knuckles white, every heartbeat screamed it. They had underestimated me. Thought I was soft, pliable, weak, small. Let them. Because I would show them what happens when you try to erase someone who refuses to vanish. I drove through the rain, alone, angry, awake, and for the first time that night, I smiled. I started noticing the little things first. Clara. She smiled, but it was sharp. Thin. Every word she said carried a sting wrapped in sugar. "So you actually enjoy cooking?" she asked, her voice high, too sweet. "I thought someone from your background might find it a chore." I froze. My fork hovered over my plate. "I do," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She laughed, a short, clipped sound. "Well, that sip's surprising." Daniel shifted beside me, eyes darting to mine, then away. He didn't defend me. Never did. Just quiet, awkward, like a guest in his own home. I looked at Evelyn, her gaze skimmed over me like she was inspecting a blemish. Your upbringing, she said softly, leaning toward me. Its steps different, but I suppose you do try. Try. Tie. That word felt like a slap. I gritted my teeth, swallowing my fury. I wanted to scream, to knock her perfect teacup off the table. But I didn't. Instead, I watched. I listened. I filed every glance, every whisper, every veiled insult. After dinner, I excused myself. Clara whispered something behind my back. I caught just enough. She thinks she belongs. I smiled, not at her, at the thought forming in my mind. Daniel followed me into the kitchen. Hey, you okay? His voice was low, hesitant. I leaned against the counter. I stepped fine. He frowned. It seps just sometimes it seps hard, you know. I raised an eyebrow. Hard for who? For all of us. You and them. He stopped, frustration cracking his calm veneer. I don't said want you to get hurt. I laughed. Bitter. Get hurt? Daniel, they's been hurting me since day one. I stepped past that. His jaw tightened. You stir strong, I know that. I studied his face, saw the cracks behind his carefully groomed exterior, his loyalty split, unsure where to land. I wanted more than just his acknowledgement. I wanted control, not over him, over everything. That night, I didn't sleep. I opened my laptop and started digging. Public records, property listings, historical ownership, the estate, their pride, their obsession. The very thing they'd whispered about, coveted, schemed over for generations. I traced every detail, every loophole, every vulnerability. It felt almost poetic. The more I learned, the more the idea bloomed inside me. If they would never accept me, if they thought I was beneath them, I could use their desire against them. I leaned back, staring at the screen, heart pounding, a quiet thrill rising in my chest. I remembered Clara's mocking smile, Evelyn's cold gaze, Daniel's silence. Each moment became fuel. The seed had been planted. I could turn their obsession with the estate into my leverage. Slowly, carefully, strategically. The next day, I tested the waters. Clara was in the sitting room, pretending to read. So, she said, eyes flicking up at me. Did you enjoy last night? I smiled sweetly, neutral. I learned a lot. Her brow arched. Oh? About us? I nodded. About the family. She leaned back, smug. I hope you supper ready, because this world isn't set easy to fit into. I let her words hang in the air. I think I still manage. Daniel walked past, and I caught him staring. I didn't look away. I am serious, I added softly under my breath. I will manage. He nodded, just barely, hesitation in his eyes. That was enough. He didn't need to fully understand. He just needed to see. I wasn't broken. Later, alone, I visualized it. The estate, the sprawling gardens, the pride of generations, once theirs. Soon, maybe mine. I traced every corner on my mental map, every hidden gate, every financial gap, every family secret I could leverage. A plan began to form, quiet, meticulous, like a spider weaving its web. And with every detail I uncovered, anger simmered deeper. Not blind, destructive anger. Calculated, cold, sweet. Because they had underestimated me, thought I was weak, fragile, unworthy. Let them. I would let them believe they were untouchable, that I was still beneath notice. And then, when the moment was right, I'd move. The thought made my pulse quicken. Finally, I closed my laptop and exhaled slowly. My reflection in the screen stared back, eyes sharp, determined, not afraid anymore. Tonight I would sleep, but tomorrow, I'd start planting the seeds. And when the harvest came, they'd realize too late that the girl they dismissed was the one holding the power. I stopped reacting. Not because it didn't hurt. Oh, it hurt. Every whispered jab, every glance that sliced me like a knife. But I learned something. Silence is sharper than any scream. Clara tossed a sarcastic smile at me in the living room. You really do try, Dawn Statue. I smiled back. Sweet. Obedient. Of course. Her lips twitched. Admirable. I nodded, pretending gratitude. Inside, I was counting. Every word, every twitch, every pause. I was collecting their weaknesses like stones, stacking them silently. Daniel hovered nearby, quiet, hesitant. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice low. I shrugged. I said him fine. He bit his lip. I could see the conflict in his eyes between his parents and me, but I didn't need him to choose. Not yet, not until my plan was ready. I retreated to my room, closed the door, locked it, and opened my journal. Page 1. Evelyn, obsession with control, fear of embarrassment, pride sharper than her smile. Page 2. Clara, smug, craves attention, overcompensates when insecure. Page 3. Daniel, torn, loyal but passive, easily manipulated if nudged carefully. Every insult from last week, every sneer, every dismissive word, they weren't just wounds anymore. They were data points, coordinates on a map that I was slowly drawing in my mind. If they think I'm weak, if they think I'm silent, I wrote, they've underestimated the wrong person. I laughed quietly, a sound only the shadows heard. During the day I performed the obedient daughter-in-law, the one who nodded, who smiled politely, who accepted every condescending remark. "You know, not everyone could handle this family," Evelyn said one afternoon, a cup of tea in her hands. Her tone suggested pity, but I didn't set flinch. "But you try, that counts for something." "Thank you," I murmured, voice soft. Head down, eyes attentive. Her smirk widened. "Good, she thinks she's teaching me a lesson. She has no idea I'm learning more than her lessons." At night, when the house quieted, I returned to my maps. I detailed their routines, traced their vulnerabilities. Daniel's hesitations, Evelyn's obsessions, Clara's arrogance, each became a pathway, a thread I could pull when the time came. "Why do you spend so much time alone?" Daniel asked one evening, gently knocking on my door. "I like to think," I said, letting my voice waver slightly, weak, fragile, concerned. He frowned. "I worry about you." They they will never see me," I interrupted softly. "And that set's fine." His lips pressed together. He didn't argue, he didn't understand, not yet, and that was perfect. I flipped open my laptop and scanned old property records. The estate wasn't just walls and gardens anymore. It was a symbol, power, control, the one thing Evelyn prized above all else. I traced ownership, family alliances, financial gaps. Every line of legal text became a thread I could tug. Every neglected detail, a potential lever. Pain was my mask, patience my weapon. I noted in my journal, Step 1, observe. Step 2, understand. Step 3, move silently. The irony was delicious. They thought I was powerless, fragile, a mere shadow in their perfect lives. Yet every night I plotted. Every night I grew stronger. Every night I learned how to turn their desire into my leverage. I stared at the ceiling, thinking of the estate, their obsession, their pride. Every mention of it, every longing glance they gave it, every whisper of one day it will be ours, it fueled me. They will never see it coming. The next morning, I poured tea for Evelyn, smiling sweetly. "Would you like some sugar?" She took it, murmured a polite thanks. Not a clue in her eyes, not a single hint that I was already steps ahead, plotting silently, gathering strength. Clara passed by, rolling her eyes. "Still scribbling in that journal, I see." I laughed lightly. "It helps me think." She snorted. "Well, think all you want. You still never fit in." I nodded, quiet. "Of course." Later, alone, I traced her words in my journal. Every insult, every sneer, every careless comment, they were all pieces of a puzzle, a map of their weaknesses. I felt the power stirring inside me, slow, deliberate, intoxicating. Isolation was no longer lonely, it was strategic. And patience. Patience became a weapon sharper than any confrontation. I closed my journal, ran my fingers along the spine. This was the calm before the storm. The seeds were planted, the soil was rich, and soon, very soon, they would see that the quiet, obedient daughter-in-law had been building an empire under their noses. They wouldn't know what hit them. And that thought made the silence worth every sting, every smirk, every moment I had endured. I smiled as I walked into the estate offices, heels clicking against the polished floor. James, the agent, looked up from his desk, eyebrows raising at my presence. "Good morning," I said, voice calm, confident. "I wanted to ask about the estate on Willow Lane." He blinked. Ah, yes. Quite a property. Are you seriously considering it? I nodded, slow, deliberate. Absolutely. I've done my research. I know its history, the family legacy. I let the words hang. The slight pause, the hint of reverence, it wasn't for him. It was for the walls I could already feel closing around Evelyn and Clara in my mind. James leaned back, studying me. Will you stir? Thorough. Most buyers don't even bother with the details. I'm not most buyers, I said lightly, smiling, polished, calm, calculated. Back home that evening, dinner was tense. Evelyn served herself last, eyes flicking to me. Clara twirled her fork, smirking. Daniel watched silently. So Evelyn said, voice soft, sharp beneath the sugar. What seps this I hear about investments? I raised an eyebrow. Oh, just exploring options, I said, casual. I've been speaking with James. He has insight into several estates, their histories, potential for growth. Claricep's jaw tightened. You stir serious about this? Very, I said. It's such a fascinating market, and this particular property, its value is incredible, historically and financially. Evelyn blinked. Slightly off balance. I could see it, the carefully crafted poise slipping. I didn't realize you had such an interest, she said, voice tight. I thought you were otherwise engaged. I smiled softly. Engaged, yes. But I believe in understanding everything before making a decision. Daniel's eyes found mine across the table. Hesitation, worry, approval, maybe a mix. I didn't need him to speak, not yet. The next morning, I met James at the property. The sun was soft, casting long shadows over the manicured gardens. This place, he said, gesturing expansively. It's remarkable. Not many buyers can appreciate its history fully. I walked beside him, hands clasped behind my back. I've studied it. Every deed, every renovation, every family dispute. I let my voice hold confidence, authority. He chuckled softly. Most people wouldn't bother. They see walls and gardens, not the story behind them. Stories matter, I said, especially when the walls themselves have witnessed generations of ambition and pride. James Sipp's eyes flicked toward me, intrigued. Yusep's serious and persistent. Relentless, I corrected him. I don't waste time on things I don't intend to claim. Each visit became a performance. Polite questions, subtle compliments, professional curiosity, but underneath, it was war. A silent strike. I watched Evelyn's reactions like radar. She couldn't touch me, not here, not in this space. Back at their dining table that evening, I let the conversation drift. Did you know, I said casually, that properties like this often have hidden opportunities? Renovations, historical tax benefits. Evelyn's fork paused midair. Her smile tightened. Clara froze, eyes wide. Daniel glanced at me, brow furrowed, unsure whether to intervene or watch. You're planning to invest? Evelyn asked, voice measured, too measured. I said I'm exploring options, I said lightly. Every visit teaches me more, and honestly the potential is extraordinary. Clara Sepp's laugh was brittle, extraordinary for someone who... I cut her off, soft but firm. Yes, extraordinary. Even underestimated people can see what others cannot. The table went silent. Evelyn's fingers trembled slightly on her napkin. The room felt smaller, tighter, and for the first time I felt the intoxicating rush of control, quiet and undeniable. Later that night, Daniel found me in the library, poring over notes from the estate visits. You're really serious about this, he said, voice soft. I am, I replied, eyes on my papers. And you should know, I said I'm not naive. I understand what this means to your family. He hesitated. They don't think you belong. And now, I know, I said, looking up at him. That's why I need to be thorough. Careful, patient, quiet, every move calculated. He nodded slowly, unsure whether to encourage me or warn me. I let him linger in the tension. I didn't need his approval. Not yet. Over the following weeks, each handshake with James, each question I asked, each subtle hint at financial literacy, became a small victory. Evelyn's tight smiles, Clara's forced politeness, Daniel's conflicted looks, all fuel. One afternoon James said, You have a presence, a sharp mind. I can tell you one stat let this opportunity slip. I smiled, letting the compliment settle. I intend to see it through, carefully, deliberately. Every detail matters. That night, at dinner, I let slip another hint of potential investment strategies. Evelyn's fork hovered midair. Clara's eyes widened. Daniel looked torn. And I felt the rush of silent triumph. They had assumed I was weak, that I was passive, that I couldn't play their game. But I could, and I would. The first strike wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was subtle, invisible to the untrained eye. But every flicker of doubt in Evelyn's eyes, every uncomfortable glance from Clara, every hesitation from Daniel, that was my victory. I leaned back in my chair, heart steady, pulse calm. The estate wasn't just a property anymore. It was my foothold, my leverage, my proof that the girl they dismissed could move mountains while they slept. And I smiled quietly to myself. Because they had no idea what was coming. I held the pen a little longer than necessary as I signed the contract. The paper felt heavier than any weight I had carried before. Victory, sharp and intoxicating, coursed through me. Daniel peeked over my shoulder. You did it. His voice was a mix of awe and caution. I did, I said. Calm, controlled, but inside my heart was racing, adrenaline pounding in sync with my pulse. He nodded slowly. They still never see it coming. I smiled, quietly. That was the point. The look on their faces would be worth every insult, every cold glance, every dismissive word they'd thrown at me. The weekend came. Family brunch. The sun was soft, spilling over the terrace. Evelyn fussed with the napkins. Clara twirled her hair. Daniel sat stiffly, pretending casual conversation. I poured my coffee, careful to meet Evelyn Sip's eyes. You know, I said lightly, I finalized a little acquisition recently. Evelyn froze mid-pour, the silver spoon suspended in the air. Her smile tightened like a drawn cord. Clara sits fork-covered. Her eyes darted to mine. Acquisition? I nodded casually. Yes, the Willow Lane estate. The silence hit first. A heavy, crushing pause, the kind that drowns out every thought. Evelyn's jaw clenched. Robert, always calm, looked pale. Clara's lips parted, a whispered curse escaping her before she could stop it. You bought it? Evelyn's voice was brittle, almost a whisper. Yes, I said softly, leaning back in my chair, savoring the moment. It seemed like the right move. A wise investment, historically and financially significant. Clara sputtered, covering her mouth. But, I know what you are thinking, I interrupted. Gentle, almost mocking, that I sept my naive, that I don't sept belong, that I couldn't sept possibly understand the magnitude of this property. I let the words sink in, but clearly, I do. Daniel's hand found mine under the table. A silent anchor. I gave a tiny squeeze, letting him know he wasn't seeing just my victory, he was witnessing the transformation. Evelyn Sepp's voice dropped. Sharp. You Kef, been planning this all along. I shrugged. Calm. I said been learning. Observing, understanding. Just like anyone who intends to succeed would. Robert's face was pale, lips pressed tight. He opened his mouth, closed it, swallowed. I watched him falter. Felt it. Clara Supp's whisper reached my ears. Impossible, she can spet. I smiled faintly. It steps very possible. Evelyn Stett's hand trembled slightly as she set down her coffee cup. You Seb outmaneuvered us. Not outmaneuvered, I said softly. I Seb simply been patient, silent, calculating. You taught me that patience is a virtue. Daniel looked at me with a mixture of pride and fear. I could read it all in him. Relief that I wasn't hurt. Awe at my resolve. Worry at the storm brewing in his parents' hearts. Perfect. Clara leaned back, folding her arms. I can believe this. You stir serious. Completely, I said, voice steady, deliberate. Every detail checked, every risk calculated, every step planned carefully. Evelyn Sepp's eyes narrowed. Do you understand what this means? To our family? To the legacy? I understand more than you think, I said lightly. I understand that underestimating someone has consequences. I understand that patience can be more powerful than confrontation. And I understand that sometimes, the quietest voices make the loudest impact. The room was still, heavy, electric. I let them sit in it. Breathe it. Swallow it. Robert finally cleared his throat. Weak. We never imagined. No, I said softly, shaking my head. You did instead. That's why I had to do it quietly, thoughtfully, step by step. Every insult you threw, every cold glance, every whispered "Setch'll never fit instead." They were the fuel. And now you see me. Evelyn's eyes glistened, not with tears, but with disbelief. Anger. Fear. Something I had cultivated carefully over months, like an invisible blade sliding closer and closer. Clara's mouth opened again, but no words came. Her usual arrogance dissolved into shock. I leaned forward, voice low, almost intimate. This is just the beginning. Daniel squeezed my hand again. His silent acknowledgement of my resolve, my patience, my careful execution, it made the thrill sweeter. I felt the surge of vindication deep in my chest, not the childish, fleeting satisfaction of petty revenge. No, this was something sharper, steadier, a lesson learned, a line drawn. The brunch continued, but the energy had shifted. Every glance they cast my way carried tension, awareness. The subtle hierarchy had changed. And I sat, calm, observing, patient, powerful. Because I knew now, revenge is as much about waiting as it is about acting. Timing, precision, patience. And when the storm came, when the reality fully sank in, they would finally understand the naive outsider they dismissed was unstoppable. I took a sip of coffee, eyes meeting Evelyn's one last time. She didn't flinch. Not yet, but I saw it, the crack in the perfect facade, and it was mine. I watched them carefully. At first they tried to laugh it off. Polite chuckles, awkward jokes, veiled threats disguised as casual conversation. You really went through with it, Evelyn said, voice clipped, forcing a smile. I didn't expect such decisiveness. I tilted my head, smiling softly. I thought it was time someone took action. Clara rolled her eyes. Well, bravo. Who would step thought? I let the words hang in the air, letting every syllable land like a stone. Every forced laugh they made only sharpened the moment. Daniel shifted beside me, fidgeting with his fork. They're just surprised, he said quietly. They'll get over it. I looked at him. Surprised is one thing, realizing they underestimated me, that sip's another. Dinner conversation grew tense, strained. Every glance Evelyn cast my way carried the weight of unspoken fury. Clara's usual smirk was gone, replaced with thinly veiled irritation. You've really changed the game, haven't you? Evelyn murmured, voice low. I prefer the term leveling the field, I said, calm, collected. I could see her jaw tighten, felt it. Even Robert, who always prided himself on composure, seemed brittle. The man who never lost his cool now blinked too fast, swallowed too hard. I watched him carefully, savoring every flicker of discomfort. Later, whispers began. Friends, relatives, business associates. Words floating just out of earshot. She bought the estate. She actually did it. Can you believe the audacity? I heard it all. Smiles on my face. Fire in my chest. Every whisper was a drumbeat of vindication. Clara Sepp's voice cut across the room. Its steps unbelievable. No one saw this coming. Exactly, I said lightly, letting the tension stretch. No one expected me to be serious, to see the potential, to take the leap. Evelyn's fork hovered midair, eyes flashing, pride and control slipping from her grasp like sand through fingers. Do you understand what this means? She asked quietly, almost choking on the words. I understand perfectly, I said softly. It means patience pays off. Planning matters, and sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one who moves mountains. Daniel's hand found mine again, a quiet reassurance. His eyes said what words couldn't. I see you. I'm proud, and I'm scared, because they have to see you too. At a later gathering, their closest friends approached me, half-whispered congratulations, subtle nods of respect. Even some of the associates who had always favored Evelyn paused, considering weighing. You handled that impressively, one murmured. Not many would have the nerve. I smiled. The kind of smile that Sepp's patient but sharp. Thank you. Sepp learned from the best. Timing, precision, observation, those things matter. Evelyn passed by, stiff-backed, a forced smile pasted on her lips. I could see her mind racing. Every glance she cast, every measured word, betrayed her. She was no longer untouchable, no longer dominant. The estate, her lifelong dream, was in my hands. Clara tried to intervene with humor, but her jokes fell flat. Everyone sensed the shift. The table felt smaller, tighter, dominated by a new balance of power. Do you realize the attention this will bring? Evelyn asked finally, voice trembling. I leaned forward, calm. Yes, and I intend to use it wisely. Knowledge, patience, observation, that sets the difference between fleeting audacity and lasting influence. The humiliation settled over them quietly. Not loud, not dramatic, but heavy, dense, like a shadow that clings, impossible to shake. Even Robert, ever composed, avoided my eyes. He cleared his throat. Well, congratulations, truly. Thank you, I said lightly. It means a lot coming from you. I saw it then. The realization. Evelyn, Clara, Robert, they had all misjudged me, thought me naive, weak, a shadow in their polished lives. Now they had to confront the reality. I wasn't the outsider. I wasn't powerless. I was the one holding the reins. The sweet irony made my chest tighten. Revenge wasn't just about action. It was about timing, patience, and watching the world shift beneath those who had dismissed you. Daniel squeezed my hand again. Quietly, gratefully. I gave a small nod, letting him feel the same pride, the same satisfaction, the same recognition that I had cultivated. Evelyn tried to mask it, but I saw the flicker of defeat in her eyes. Clara's arrogance crumbled, replaced with irritation and disbelief. Robert's composure cracked just enough for me to see him human, vulnerable, unmoored. I leaned back, sipping my wine, letting the weight of it all settle. The whispers, the sidelong glances, the stunned expressions, it was all mine to observe. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the underestimated daughter-in-law. I was a force they couldn't control, a presence they couldn't ignore. The taste of it lingered. Sweet, sharp, like justice refined over months of careful strategy. And I knew, deep down, that this shift, this quiet domination, was only the beginning. Because revenge is patient, revenge is deliberate, revenge is knowing exactly when to strike and savoring every second of the aftermath. I smiled quietly to myself, letting the silence speak louder than any words. I walked slowly through the halls of the estate, fingers trailing along the polished wood panels. Each step echoed softly. Each room whispered ambition. Evelyn's, Robert's, Clara's, and now mine. It was surreal. The smell of old books, the faint trace of polished marble, the way sunlight hit the grand staircase. This wasn't just property, it was a symbol. Every corner, every chandelier, every gilded frame spoke of legacy, and now that legacy was mine to command. Daniel followed quietly, his hand brushing mine. I felt the warmth, the silent acknowledgement of our shared journey. I still can believe it, he murmured, voice low, almost reverent. You really did this. I smiled faintly, letting the thrill linger. Believe it, but the work isn't set over yet. He frowned. You mean more revenge? I shook my head, not revenge in the usual sense. Subtlety matters now, strategy, influence. The estate is only the first move. Later I called Sarah, my confidant. My ally. She arrived within the hour, eyes wide at the grandeur surrounding her. Abdul, this place, it's unbelievable, she said, voice full of awe. I laughed softly. I'd sup's bigger than I imagined too, but it sup's not just about size, it sup's about presence, power, control. She sat across from me in the library, the walls lined with old leather-bound books. I always knew you were underestimated. But now, you are untouchable. Untouchable? I echoed. Not quite. I want them to squirm, to question, to realize they were wrong, but they must never see malice. Only inevitability. Sarah nodded slowly. So the estate is a symbol, but what sets the real goal? I leaned back, eyes scanning the room. The real goal is clarity, subtle exposure. Let their arrogance, their selfishness, their obsession with control, speak for itself. I don't have to attack. I just orchestrate the stage. Sarah smiled, a spark in her eyes. I get it, moral high ground, poetic justice. Yes, I said softly, every dinner, Every meeting, every casual mention of the estate, a reminder, not overt, not cruel, just visible enough, a symbol of what they underestimated. We laughed then, quietly, softly, letting the release of months of tension settle in the air. And you, sir, still human, Sarah said after a pause. You did instead let this turn you into someone bitter. I looked at her. That seps the point. Revenge is only meaningful when it seps measured, strategic, patient, silent. If I stooped to cruelty, it would tarnish the victory. But subtle is powerful. She tilted her head. And Daniel? How does he handle all this? I smiled faintly. He seps torn, pride, fear, love, all tangled together. But he seps mine in thought and loyalty. He sees me, really sees me. That seps enough. We moved to the balcony, overlooking the gardens. Evening sun cast long shadows over the manicured hedges, the fountains glinting. I want every whisper, every glance, every subtle doubt to remind them of reality, I said, voice quiet but firm. They thought they controlled me. They didn't even know I was playing a different game. Sarah nodded, thoughtful. And now the estate is your board. Every move calculated. Exactly, I said. Every conversation, every casual mention, every toast symbols, signs small truths they can ignore but one us did realize I have orchestrated. We paused, letting the silence settle. I felt the weight of the estate around me. Its power wasn't just financial, it was psychological, emotional, it was leverage, and I had learned how to wield it without malice. I like this, Sarah said finally, smiling. Not revenge, exactly, but justice, framed beautifully. Yes, I said, voice low. Justice framed perfectly, and it tastes sweeter than any rash action could ever deliver. Daniel joined us on the balcony, hands in pockets, hesitant but present. He gazed at the sunset, then at me. Yuseb changed everything, not just for them, for us. I reached for his hand. It seps not about them anymore. It seps about being seen, being acknowledged, being respected. He squeezed my hand gently. Yusep earned it. Every ounce of it. I nodded, letting the moment linger. This wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was final. Every hallway, every room, every symbol of ambition and pride now carried a new truth: I belonged. I had arrived, and they couldn't erase it. The real triumph wasn't in possession, it was in quiet dominance, subtle exposure, the knowledge that they had underestimated me. I watched the sunset from the balcony, warm light spilling over the marble floors. I smiled softly to myself. Not vindictive, not cruel, calculated, strategic, perfected. And for the first time in a long while, I felt complete. Because owning the estate was just the beginning. The real power was in how I let them see me, not as the outsider, but as the force they never anticipated. And that was a victory that could never be taken away. The estate had changed. Not the walls, not the chandeliers, not the polished floors. They'd always been magnificent. But the energy, the pulse of it, belonged to me now. I walked through the main hall, heels clicking softly against marble. Each step echoed authority. Each glance across the room reminded me this space was mine. Daniel followed, quiet, respectful. His hand brushed mine for a moment. I didn't need to look at him. I could feel his pride, his awe. This feels unreal, he murmured. It feels right, I said softly. And it should. Every corner, every shadow, it carries a story. Now the story is mine to write. I started hosting events, carefully curated functions, philanthropic gatherings, charity auctions, small intimate dinners, the type that drew attention without shouting. Evelyn and Robert attended reluctantly, like ghosts in their own home, polite smiles, forced laughter, eyes that darted, searching for cracks. You really pulled this off, Evelyn said quietly, one evening, voice brittle as I addressed a room full of dignitaries. I didn't think it possible. I smiled lightly, acknowledging her words but keeping my tone measured. It steps all about vision, patience, and careful execution. Clara hovered at the edges, attempting subtle intimidation, whispered comments to the staff, casual manipulations of Daniel. I can't believe she's running everything, she hissed to him one evening as we prepared the tables for a fundraiser. Clara, Daniel started, eyes flicking nervously toward me. Try to convince me she's untouchable, Clara snapped. You know she can possibly handle this without. I appeared beside them casually, as if summoned by the room itself. Handle what? I asked softly, voice calm but sharp. The staff's eyes followed me. They were loyal, careful, observant. Clara faltered. I just meant. I see everything, I said lightly, letting the words sink. Every plan, every comment, every attempt at manipulation, and I assure you, it's all carefully accounted for. Daniel exhaled slowly, relief softening his features. Clara's mouth opened, then closed. She had nothing left to say. I realized something then. Revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't the storm you see coming. It was subtle, elegant, methodical, visible only in the silent realization of failure, in the shifts of expression when they understood they'd underestimated me. Evelyn approached me quietly after the event. Voice low. You have completely changed the rules. The house, everything. I met her gaze evenly. I didn't change the rules. I just understood them better. Timing, observation, patience, that's all it takes. Her lips pressed tight, eyes flickering. Pride wounded but restrained. The realization that her long-held dominance had slipped, priceless. Robert tried to intervene. Abdul, I mean you've done well, but. I let the pause stretch, deliberate. Thank you, Robert, but I believe results speak louder than words, and you can see them, can set you. He swallowed, jaw tight. The unspoken acknowledgement hung in the air. Every small gathering became a performance, a silent display of authority. I let Evelyn and Clara witness successes they could neither claim nor control. Each compliment, each toast, each quiet acknowledgement of my vision, they observed, silently, powerless. One afternoon, a charity auction, Clara attempted one last subtle sabotage. She whispered to the staff, attempted to redirect donations, subtly undermine proceedings. I caught it immediately. A soft smile. A few quiet words in the right ear, a gentle correction in the right place. By the end, everything ran perfectly. Her plan unraveled without drama, without confrontation. She left, flushed, furious, but no one else noticed. Daniel found me later, in the study. That was incredible, he whispered. She thought she could. I know, I said softly, settling into the chair behind the desk. But power isn't allowed. It isn't explosive. It's quiet, observed, calculated, elegantly undeniable. He nodded, eyes wide. You completely changed everything. Yes, I said, voice low. Everything. Even Evelyn approached me once more. A week later, I don't know if I can ever look at this house the same way. I smiled faintly, letting it linger. That's the point. Perception is power. And now you see clearly what you once dismissed. Clara attempted to speak, but no words would form. Even she understood, finally, that the balance of control had shifted. Daniel stayed close, quiet, proud, slightly awed. I took his hand, the weight of our shared journey grounding me. I walked through the estate later that evening alone, soft light spilling over the marble floors. The chandeliers glinted. The walls seemed to hum with history, ambition, and finally, my authority. Every room, every hallway, every shadow now belonged to me. They had been dismissive, arrogant, certain of their control, and now they were spectators, observers at the periphery of a life they had tried to define, and failed. The thrill wasn't in confrontation. It wasn't in drama. It was in subtlety, in methodical mastery, in witnessing their silent comprehension that they had underestimated me, and lost. I smiled to myself, quietly, not for malice, not for cruelty, but for justice, earned through patience, strategy, and understanding. The estate was my stage. I was the director. They were the audience. And the shift of power, irreversible. Months had passed, but the estate still felt alive under my footsteps. Each hallway, each archway, each polished floorboard carried echoes of every confrontation, every whisper, every calculated move I had made. Daniel Sepp's hand brushed mine as we walked through the gallery. You know, he said softly, voice almost reverent, it still feels unreal. All this, it's yours. I smiled faintly, letting my fingers linger in his. It isn't about owning it anymore. It's about what it represents. He looked at me, puzzled. Power? Revenge? I shook my head. No. Strength, patience, strategy, every insult they ever threw my way, every condescending glance, it all built me. And now I walk here, knowing they can touch what I earned, not with anger, not with influence, not with the arrogance they clung to for so long. He squeezed my hand, proud but cautious. And them. Your in-laws, how are they taking it? I chuckled softly. Evelyn and Robert, they started to recognize the truth. Not fully, of course. They will never admit they misjudged me entirely. But they acknowledge that I no longer a shadow in this house. They see me, at least enough to know they lost control. Clara? Daniel asked quietly. I smiled faintly. She still thinks she can undermine me, but subtlety works quietly. Elegance always prevails over brashness. Every attempt she made to manipulate staff, me, even you, has collapsed quietly, without drama, without exposure, just failure witnessed. We entered the drawing room, where sunlight spilled over the antique rugs, casting golden patterns across the marble floors. I paused, letting my gaze travel across the space. Every chandelier, every painting, every table held memories of ambition, pride, and now triumph. Daniel watched me. You changed, he said. Not just in this house, but in yourself. There's a confidence, serenity. You walk differently. I laughed softly, almost bitterly. Confidence, maybe. Serenity, that newer. It comes from realizing that I don't need their approval anymore. I never did. I built my own. Even after everything, the whispers, the stares, the subtle sabotage. I nodded. Yes. Every scar I carry is a reminder. A reminder of patience, of calculated choices, of knowing when to act and when to wait. Revenge. It taught me that power doesn't roar. It observes. It waits. It unfolds elegantly, and when it does, the impact is undeniable. Daniel pulled me close, resting his forehead against mine. And now, you feel free? I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the words sink. Not free, empowered, alive. The estate is more than land. It's a symbol of control I've claimed. But the real victory is in walking through life on my own terms. Without fear, without needing approval, without the chains of expectation from people who never understood me. Later I hosted a quiet dinner, Daniel, me, and my in-laws. No staff, no audience, just presence. Evelyn Sepp's voice trembled slightly as she spoke, carefully measured. Abdul, I suppose, congratulations are in order. The house, the estate, Yusef managed something remarkable. I nodded, acknowledging her words. Thank you, Evelyn. I hope you understand. It wasn't just about property. It was about proving that strategy, patience, and understanding one's own worth matters more than arrogance or pride. Robert, ever precise, added stiffly. I underestimated your resolve, that sip's evident. I smiled faintly. Underestimation is dangerous, but it can be instructive. I learned from every slight, every dismissal, and I turned it into something lasting. Clara's mouth opened, then closed. I didn't need to speak. Her expression said it all. Irritation, disbelief, resignation. She realized she had lost the subtle battles she had tried to fight in this quiet war. Daniel leaned toward me, voice barely audible. I never been more proud, not just of what you accomplished, but who you become. I rested my head against his shoulder, feeling the weight of the journey. It wasn't easy. Not by far, but strength isn't built in comfort. It's forged in the fire of challenge. And sometimes, revenge isn't about harming others. It's about proving to yourself that you can rise above, that you can claim your narrative and live it fully. Evelyn cleared her throat. I suppose there's a lesson here for all of us. I allowed a small, gracious smile. Yes. Observe. Learn. Recognize that underestimation has consequences. But also remember that respect can be demanded. It must be earned, and in the quiet, careful moments, influence is far more powerful than force. The room was silent after that. Not uncomfortable, not tense, just acknowledgement. The subtle shift of power settling like dust in sunlight. Later, Daniel and I walked through the gardens. The fountains glistened in the late afternoon sun, the hedges trimmed perfectly, the pathways echoing the precision that had guided my journey. You've really done it, he said quietly, taking in the view, not just the estate, everything. Yes, I said softly. But the estate is just a part of it. The real victory is internal. The strength, the patience, the clarity, walking forward without needing validation. Owning not just land, but my story. He paused, gazing at me. And you feel at peace. I let the breeze brush my face, feeling the weight of months lift. Peace is part of it. Empowerment, pride, a sense that I Sep no longer playing by their rules. I Sep created my own, and I will never need permission to exist fully again. Daniel smiled, squeezing my hand. I Sept with you, every step. I nodded, letting the moment linger. This wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was complete, quiet, certain, irrevocable. The estate stood as a monument, not just to strategy and patience but to the self I had discovered along the way, a self resilient, cunning, capable, and undeniably powerful. I glanced back at the house, then at Daniel. It's Sep's ours now, in every sense that matters. He smiled, softly, tenderly. Yours, ours. And for the first time in years, I felt it fully. Not revenge, not triumph alone, but liberation. Ownership, completion. The world had underestimated me once. They never would again. And I walked forward through the grand halls of the estate, knowing I had finally claimed my real victory.